Hey, what's up, guys? Vigilant Texan here. I'm very excited to bring you part 3 of a 4-part series entitled Tares Amongst the Wheat. This is part 3, and it's entitled The Chaff. Now, part 1 was the garden, part 2 was the fallen, and if you haven't seen both of those, you definitely need to go back and watch them, because I'm not going to do a huge recap. This is already going to be a pretty long video, so I'm just going to assume that you've seen both the first two and that you understand what they're about. And we're just going to kind of pick up in part 3 here, talking about the chaff. The overall topic, just to give you a quick rundown, is that they're, in the end, in the harvest of all the beings and souls on earth, there are going to be 3 types given forth in the parables: the tares, the chaff, and the wheat. Now, the tares are either people who've decided to be evil, or who were born kind of evil because maybe they had the wrong lineage or something that caused them to be evil by birth, or genetically evil, predisposed to evil, so to speak. Those will get rounded up first and thrown in the lake of fire. But then the ones who claim to be children of Elohim, they'll be gathered into the barn, into the threshing floor, where the chaff will then be separated from the wheat. The chaff meaning those who will not get into the kingdom. Now, in this video, we're going to focus on the chaff and possibly some of the tares, and we're going to talk about all the different types of people that this can include, types of beings this can include. And we're going to go back and look at some of the stuff that happened pre-flood and some of the stuff in the Old Testament, and see if we can learn a little bit of interesting information here about the chaff, and it's going to get a little interesting for sure. So I'd like to start in Genesis in chapter 1, where it talks about the creation of the different types of creatures, and we're going to focus on verses 23 through 25, and it says, "And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the 5th day, and Elohim said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature, according to its kind, livestock, and creeping creature, and beasts of the earth, according to his kind. And it came to be so. And Elohim made the beast of the earth after his kind, capital H, his kind, livestock according to their kind, and all that creepeth on the earth according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good." Now, the first thing I'd like to look at is that word kind, which is Strong's number 4327, and the meaning of it is, it is the Hebrew word min, pronounced mean. So the mean, which is a very interesting English word, kind of like the means to an end. So it's from an unusual root meaning to portion out a sort, like a type, i.e. a species, or a kind, a sort. Alright? So there's the different sorts of creatures, different kinds of creatures, different types of creatures, or species of creatures, okay? And it's interesting because we know that Adam was the first being that was created in the likeness and image after Elohim's kind. But it's interesting here that first we're given generic Hebrew word for creature, which is nephesh there, which basically comes from the root word nephash, which means to breathe, to be breathed upon. Okay, that's what it means to nephash. But a nephesh is something that breathes, a breathing creature, an animal. Okay, so we're talking about anything that breathes first. We're going to talk about creatures here, and then it says after its kind, livestock, creeping creatures, beasts of the earth, according to his kind. But then we're given a little bit more specifics, and it says, "And it came to be so. And then Elohim made the beast of the earth after his kind." Now, that word for beast there is an interesting one. It's kai, pronounced kai, or che, from kaya, and it means alive, a flesh, strong flesh. Literally or figuratively, alive. Appetite, could be a beast, company, congregation, living creature, something that requires maintenance, a merry multitude, something that's running, springing, a troop. A very interesting word there. And so apparently Elohim made those kai after his kind. Now, what are we? Okay, Well, let's think about this for a minute. We are two-legged, intelligent beings that have hands instead of, another set of hooves, and, we can eat, grass, or we can be carnivorous. And so if we're after the kind, likeness, and image of Elohim, meaning like his image, then we're like him. But our kind, what kind or type are we? Well, we're two-legged, two-handed, upright beings. All right. So it's interesting that it goes back and says that Elohim made these beasts, these kai, after his kind. Interesting. But then livestock, according to their kind, and that word for livestock is behema, which sounds a lot like the English word behemoth, and it means, from an unusual root, to be mute, properly a dumb beast, especially any large quadruped or animal, a beast or cattle. So okay, so that's what the behemoth is. So these other things, these beasts that are after Elohim's kind, they're not the four-legged dumb beasts. All right, cool. And then you have the things that creep. Let's talk about those quickly. That word there was remes, which the root of remes is ramos, which means to glide swiftly, to crawl, or to move with short steps. So that's what it means to creep. And then something that does that is called a remes. All right. So this other thing here that was created, this che, this kai, after Elohim's kind, it's not any of those things. And of course we know it's not human, because that was what Adam and Eve were. They were after his likeness and image. And interestingly enough, in this chapter we just get Elohim, which means mighty one, but then in chapter 2 it goes and says that Yahuwah, the Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, took and gave breath into Adam. And so, you get a little, maybe there's a little distinction there, we're not sure. This is an excerpt from the Colburn Bible in the creation chapter that I thought was very interesting. It's it's not from the Hebrew. It's just like an account of creation and the Bible, but not from the rabbinical Hebrew sources. And it says, "The waters brought forth fishes and creatures which move about and twist themselves and wriggle in the waters, the serpents and the beasts of terrible aspect, which were of yore, and reptiles which creep and crawl. There were tall walking things, and dragons in hideous form, clothed with terror, whose great bones may still be seen. Then came forth from the womb of the earth all the beasts of the field and the forest, all the creatures of creation having blood in their bodies, and it was complete. Beasts roamed the dry land, and the fish swarmed in the seas, and there were birds in the skies and worms within the soil." Interesting that it talks about the tall walking things that aren't man or human. You think about maybe a Sasquatch or something. Now here's a very interesting account from the Lost Book of Enki. Now, we talked about the fallen angels in the last one, and how if you've heard of the ancient aliens, the theory that the History Channel has put forth, that maybe we were seeded by ancient aliens because they had found all this archaeological information about the Anunnaki. Alright, well, us knowing the truth, we understand that those were the fallen angels, but they found these books that were supposedly written by or about these Anunnaki, and one such book is the Lost Book of Enki. So if we think about it as Enki being a fallen angel, and he's talking with his other fallen angels here, and they're trying to figure things out, there's some very interesting stuff that's being talked about here, and this is from the Book of Enki. Bear with me, they talk a little differently here, kind of like Yoda. They'll put you'll see. It's a very interesting little passage here, though. So this is from tablets 5 and 6, and it says, "They summoned Ningishzida from the house of life he came, and with him Enki huddled. Words amongst them they exchanged. A solution is possible, Enki was saying. Let us create a Lulu, a primitive worker, the hardship work to take over. Let the being the toil of the Anunnaki carry on his back. Astounded were the besieged leaders. Speechless indeed they were. Whoever heard of a being after afresh created, a worker with the Anunnaki's work can do? They summoned Nimah, who was of healing and succor, was much knowing. Enki's words to her they repeated. Whoever of such a thing heard, they asked her. The task is unheard of, she said to Enki said. All beings from a seed have descended. one being from another over eons did develop. None from nothing ever came. How right you are, my sister, Enki said, smiling. A secret of the Abzu let me to you all reveal. The being that we need, it already exists. All that we have to do is put on it the mark of our essence. Thereby a Lulu, a primitive worker, shall be created. So did Enki to them say. Let us hereby a decision make, a blessing to my plan give, to create a primitive worker by the mark of our essence to fashion him. And it's interesting how they talk about the mark of their essence. And you know, of course, we have the talk in the book of Revelations about those who accept the mark of the beast, how they cannot get into the kingdom. And now here we have these fallen angels talking about putting their essence on these things. And it says, creatures in the Abzu there are, Enki was saying. They walk erect on two legs. Their forelegs they use as arms. With hands they are provided. Among the animals of the steppe they live. They know not dressing in garments. They eat plants with their mouths. They drink water from lake and ditch. Shaggy with their hair is their whole body. Their head hair is like a lion's. With gazelles they jostle. With teeming creatures in the water they delight. The leaders to Enki's words with amazement listened. No creature like that has ever in Eden been seen. Enlil, disbelieving, said, eons ago on Nibiru, our predecessors like that might have been. Nima was saying, it is a being, not a creature, Nima was saying. To behold it must be a thrill. To the house of life Enki led them. In strong cages there were some of the beings. At the sight of Enki and others they jumped up. With fists on the cage, bars they were beating. They were grunting and snorting. No words were they speaking. Male and female they are, Enki was saying. Male hoods and female hoods they have, like us. From Nibiru coming, they are procreating. Ningish Zeta, my son, their fashioning essence has tested. Akin to ours it is. Like two serpents it is entwined. When there with our life essence shall be combined, our mark upon them shall be. A primitive worker shall be created. Our commands will be understand. Our tools he will handle. With the toil and excavations he shall perform. To the Anunnaki in Abzu relief shall come. Interesting. Here we have in the book of Jubilees, from the creation account there, an interesting passage how it also lists the beasts different and separate from the other kinds and types of animals that were created. And it says, and on 6 days of the second week we brought, according to the word of Elohim, unto Adam all the beasts and all the cattle and all the birds and everything that moves on the earth and everything that moves in the water according to their kinds. So list all that stuff there, and according to their types, the beasts on the first day, cattle on the second day, the birds on the third day, and all that which moves on the earth the fourth day, and that which moves in the waters on the fifth. So the beasts are created on their own separate day, and it's not with Adam on the sixth. And now, an interesting verse here in Jeremiah chapter 31, in verse 27 and 28 says, see, the days are coming, declareth Yahuwah, that I shall sow the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man and the seed of beast. What? And it shall be that as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and to throw down and to destroy and to afflict, so I shall watch over them to build and to plant, declares Yahuwah. And this is a different translation, the World English Bible. Same verse says, behold, the days come, say Yahweh, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man, with the seed of animal. Oh. And then in another translation it says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the descendants of Adamites and with the descendants of non-Adamites. What? So, what I'm trying to get at here, folks, is that there can definitely be some different types of creatures that we just don't see now anymore in our modern times that may have definitely been around pre-flood and could have been around in these the times of the Tanakh. Because now what we're going to do is go through some of these other verses that mention that word beast, and we're going to see that we have beasts in the Old Testament doing some very interesting things and so in Genesis 3:1, when we're talking about the garden incident, it says, and the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahuwah Elohim hath made. So they used the word beast there. And in Zechariah chapter 8, verses 9 and 10, it says, Thus saith Yahuwah of hosts, let your hands be strong, you who are listening in these days to these words from the mouth of the prophets. Of the day the foundation was laid for the house of Yahuwah of hosts, the Hekel that was to be rebuilt. For before these days there was not a wage for man, nor a hire for beast, and there was no peace for him who went out or came in, because of his enemies. And I shall set all men one against another. Wow, so you can hire these beasts? Ezekiel chapter 14, verse 15. If I cause an evil beast to pass through the land, and it shall bereave it, and shall be a wasteland, so that no man passes through because of the beast. What kind of beast could those be? Something like this? Don't know. Exodus chapter 9, verse 9. And it shall become fine dust in the land of Mitzrayim, and it shall cause boils to break out, in the boils on man and beast in the land of Mitzrayim. So we're talking about the plagues of Exodus, and apparently there are types of beasts that could get the same boils in the plague. And later in chapter 19 of Exodus, when Yah's about to come down and audibly give the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, and he's warning them not to come close to the mountain, and it says, And you shall make a border for the people all around, saying, Take heed to yourselves that you do not go up to the mountain or touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mountain shall certainly be put to death. Not a hand is to touch it, but he shall certainly be stoned or shot with an arrow, whether man or beast. He shall not live. So they're beasts that are smart enough to disobey commandments, apparently. Okay, now here we're going to look at a couple of passages that are very interesting. In Leviticus here, we're given a commandment about sleeping or having intercourse with beasts. And in Leviticus chapter 18, verses 23 through 25 say, And do not have intercourse with any beast, to defile yourself with it. And the woman does not stand before a beast to mate with it. It is a perversion. Do not defile yourself with all these, for by all these the nations are defiled, which I am driving out before you. Thus the land became defiled. Therefore I punish it for its crookedness, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. Okay, so in chapter 18 here, we're given a commandment about not having intercourse with a beast, and a woman does not stand before the beast to mate with it. It's a perversion. Then later in chapter 20, we're given another commandment, okay? And it says, And a man who has intercourse with a beast, he shall certainly be put to death. And the beast you kill, and a woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, you shall kill the woman and the beast. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. So why are we given another commandment for sleeping with beasts? And then this one gives a different description. In the first one, a woman does not stand before a beast to mate with it. It's a perversion only. But then in this one it says, And a woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, you shall kill the woman and the beast. So apparently, one would be a weird thing where a woman stands before, and you can almost imagine like a horse trying to mate with a woman. The woman would literally have to stand there in a certain spot and, like help sort of, because the thing's too dumb to know. But then this other type of beast in chapter 20, apparently they both know, and a woman approaches to mate with it, and then you have to kill them both because it was consensual. See? Weird. Then later in Leviticus chapter 26, we get another interesting mention of the beast, and it says, And if you walk contrary to me and refuse to obey me, I shall bring on you 7 times more plagues according to your sins, and will send wild beasts among you, which shall bereave you of your children, and I shall cut off your livestock, and make a few in number, and the highway shall be deserted. And then in Jonah chapter 3, verses 7 and 8 says, And he caused it to be proclaimed and published through Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, saying, Let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed nor drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth, and cry mightily unto Elohim. Yea, let them turn every one from his evil ways, and from the violence that is in their hands. And then in Acts chapter 10 there, whoops, hang on a minute. Accidentally clicked off. Let's get back to where we were down here. Sorry about that. Bear with me one sec. And then in Acts it says, in which were all kinds of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping creatures, and the beasts of the heavens. So in Peter's vision of all the different types of animals in the sheet, we see four-footed beasts listed separately and different than the wild beasts. So even in the New Testament, and you're wondering, were there some weird beasts like this kind of weird thing? That's what I was wondering. What in the world? Here's an excerpt from a blog, and I lost where I just was copying and pasting things this day, and I went back to figure out where I got this from. I couldn't find the blog again, but the guy does an interesting job of explaining what I'm trying to explain here. It says, 8 different Hebrew and Greek words: behema, be'ers, ziz, che, that one we talked about, kai, cheva, trepha, nephesh, and katinos are all translated into the one English word for beast, but they each mean different things in different contexts. The word behema describes beasts who have bulls on their bodies, who have hands, who can lie down, and I think behema and the other one, che'e, they use them kind of interchangeably, who have hands, who can lie down with a woman, have sex with her, have a conscience, who are put to death for violating God's law, who have possessions which can be sold and redeemed, who hold authority which can be taken away, who have feet, who are inhabitants of cities, who God promised to be crossbred with Israelites and Judahites, who can be hired, who are kept in tents, who can cry mightily to God, who can turn away from evil, who wear sackcloth, whose seed Jeremiah predicted would be mixed with the house of Israel, the house of Judah, and man, none of which any four-legged animal on the planet is capable of. Not any that we have around on 4 legs anymore. And in Jeremiah chapter 27 here is an interesting excerpt. It says, "And you shall command them to say to their masters, Thus saith Yahuwah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, say this to your masters, I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are on the face of the earth, by my great power and my outstretched arm, and I shall give it to whom it seemed right in my eyes. And now I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, my servant, the beasts of the field I have also given him to serve him." Wow, so in that scripture, the beast can serve him. And I immediately thought about, the movies slash books, The Lord of the Rings, and all the different types of beings and people they had. And these are what the peoples of Middle Earth listed. The dwarves, eagles, which were these great, mighty, huge birds that could talk. And then elves, ents, which were trees basically that could talk and move. Giants, hobbits, men, river maidens. And then you have enslaved peoples that were Balrogs, dragons, goblins, men, orcs, ring wraiths, and I'm not going to list them all. But all of these ancient cultures talked about these different fairies and different types of beings that we no longer see anymore. And after doing this research, I start to wonder if there's a lot more truth to those things than we may or may not have known. Now this is an interesting excerpt from Jubilees, and this is talking about Esau and Jacob. Now Esau and Jacob, much like Cain and Abel, one was evil and born hairy and looking red and like some sort of animal, and then Jacob, the younger, was just a smooth man and a plain man, the scripture says. And they make this vow not to kill each other as long as their father's living, or actually it's supposed to be as long as they live. But then what happens is after Isaac dies, Esau gets bold and decides, forget that, I'm going to kill Jacob. And then we're picking up here in chapter 7. This is talking about Esau. But afterwards he remembered all the evil which lay hidden in his heart against Yaakov his brother, and he remembered not the oath which he had sworn to his father and to his mother, that he would devise no evil in all his days against Yaakov his brother. And notwithstanding all this, Yaakov knew not that they were coming against him to battle, and he was mourning for Leah his woman. until they approached very near to the tower with 4,000 warriors and chosen men of war. And the men of Chevron sent to him, saying, Behold, your brother has come against you to fight you with 4,000 girt with sword, and they carry shields and weapons, for they love Jacob more than Esau. For they told him, for Jacob was a more liberal and merciful man than Esau. But Jacob would not believe until they came very near to the tower, and he closed the gate of the tower, and he stood on the battlements, and spoke to his brother Esau, and said, Noble is the comfort wherewith you have come to comfort me for my woman who has died. So he thinks he's trying to say, oh, thank you so much for coming to comfort me because of my woman died. In this, the oath that you did swear to your father and again to your mother before they died, so he's reminding him of the oath, you have broken the oath, and on the moment that you did swear to your fathers, were you condemned? Then Esau answered and said unto him, Neither the children of men nor the beasts of the earth have any oath of righteousness, which in swearing they have sworn on oath, an oath valid forever. But every day they devise evil one against another, and how each may slay his adversary and foe. Okay, so he's basically saying, look around. All over earth there's children of men and beasts of the earth, and they're not keeping any oaths. They just go about devising evil one against another, and how each may slay his adversary foe. So the old, hey man, everybody else is doing it. And then Esau answered and said unto him, Hear these words which I declare unto you. Now here's where it gets interesting. He says to Jacob, If the boar can change its skin and make its bristles as soft as wool, or if it can cause horns to sprout forth on its head like the horns of a stag or of a sheep, then I will observe the tie of brotherhood with you. And if the beasts separate themselves from their mother, for you have not been a brother to me. And if the wolves make peace with the lambs, so as not to devour or do violence, and if their hearts toward them for good, then there shall be peace in my heart towards you. So he's giving these examples of these things in nature that can't be. And if the lion becomes friend with the ox and makes peace with him, and if he is bound under one yoke with him, a lion and an ox, and plows with him, then I'll make peace with you. So that's never going to happen. And when the raven becomes white as the raza, changes its color, then know that I've loved you and shall make peace with you. So now he's being almost sarcastic. Then he says, You shall be rooted out, and your sons shall be rooted out, and there shall be no peace for you. And when Jacob saw that he was so evilly disposed towards him with his heart, and with all his soul as to slay him, that he had come springing like a wild boar which comes upon a spear, and pierces and kills it, but recoils not from it. Then he spoke to his own and to his servants that they should attack him and all his companions. What was Esau like? He was obviously much different than Jacob. And what I'm trying to use this as an example of is that what he's trying to say is that he's so different than Jacob. It's impossible for him not to want to kill him. It's impossible for there not to be enmity between these two seeds. Okay? That's the first prediction in after the garden, was there's going to be enmity between the seed of Cain and the seed of Adam and Seth and his lineage. And it's still happening right here. It's got to happen. I'd like to read this excerpt from Romans, and we're going to switch over to a lot of Paul here, because Paul does an awesome job of explaining things as usual. And he kind of mentions this story here in this, so this is really good to go along with it here from Romans chapter 9, starting at verse 6, and it says, Not as though the word of Elohim hath taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. Neither, because they are the seed of Abraham, are they all children. But in Isaac shall thy seed be called, that is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of Elohim. But the children of the promise are counted for the seed. For this is the word of promise. At this time I will come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac. For the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, we're talking about Esau and Jacob, that the purpose of Elohim according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. Excuse me. It was said unto her, talking about Rebekah, the elder shall serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. What shall we say then? Paul asks. Is there unrighteousness with Elohim? Because look, is Elohim unrighteous because he created Esau and Jacob and already knew that Esau was the seed of the wicked one and Jacob was going to go against him? Does that mean that Elohim's unrighteous because the serpent was already in the garden? No, he had to kick them out of heaven because they rebelled. See? So it's not, you can't blame the actions of the creature on the one who created him. Certainly not. Continuing right along, for he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of Elohim that showeth mercy. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will he hardeneth. Talking about Pharaoh. Thou wilt say then unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against Elohim? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? I mean, that's what Rebekah asked when she was pregnant, right? Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another dishonor? Like, who are you to question what Yah has done here? If he wanted to allow tares to be sown amongst the wheat, then that's his prerogative. From Titus chapter 1, verse 10 through 12, and it says, For there are many unruly men, senseless talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision, meaning the Pharisees, whose mouth have to be stopped, who upset entire household, teaching what they should not teach, for the sake of filthy gain. One of them, a prophet of their own, saith, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. So, what makes them unruly men and senseless talkers and deceivers is the fact that they're claiming to be good preachers, but yet they're only doing it for the sake of filthy gain. See, that's what makes them of the flesh and of the seed of the wicked one. Then in Psalms chapter 73, we have a very interesting little excerpt here from starting at verse 3. It says, For I was envious of the sinners when I saw the peace of the wicked ones. What's he talking about here? And I won't lie, this happens to me too. You see a sinner and they have all these worldly things. They got a nice car, they got a nice wife, they got nice whatever, all these worldly possessions, like a great house, a cool job, whatever. And they're at peace. The reason they're at peace is because they have no spiritual discernment. See, this is what I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but this is what we're kind of getting into, is that the reason they're able to live a worldly life and be so satisfied by it is because that's what drives them. They're carnal, fleshly people who are only concerned with, physical things of this world. And it says, so speaking about those people, for I was envious of the sinners when I saw the peace of the wicked ones, for death has no pangs for them, and their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other Enosh men, like remember Enosh, like us from the first part there, and they are not plagued like other men, and it uses Adam there, so we get the two Hebrew words for men. They're not like us, Enosh and Adam. They're not like that lineage. Okay, Enosh being a mortal man, a man in general, Adam being a ruddy human being, a reddish, like normal person, a species of mankind, a common sort. They're not like them, okay? They have this peace when they're doing wicked things. So pride is their necklace, it goes on to say. The garment of violence covers them. Their eyes bulge from the fatness. Their heart overflows with imaginations. They mock and speak in evil of oppression. They speak loftily. Now, what I'm trying to get at and what I'm trying to read these verses for is so you'll know how to recognize these people and not, like the scripture says, don't throw your pearls before swine, all right? Because there are these fleshly, carnal people who are not meant for the kingdom of Elohim. And I know what you're thinking of. Well, isn't that very judgmental? You can't just judge people. It's not me. These are not my words. I'm going to use, as usual, scripture make my points here. From 1 Corinthians, there's two excerpts in 1 Corinthians, the first in chapter 2 and then later in chapter 15, and Paul just, as Paul usually does, very deep wisdom here. And it starts off in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, starting with verse 5. It says, that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of Elohim. Awesome. Not the wisdom of the world. Howbeit we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, yet not the wisdom of this world, nor of the princes of this world, the fallen angels, the doctrine of demons, that come to naught. But we speak the wisdom of Elohim in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom which Elohim ordained before the world unto our glory. Paul knew all these things I'm speaking about, which none of the princes of this world knew, for had they known, they would not have impaled the master of glory. Now, deep topic here. Had they had known what, would they not have impaled him? Well, had they known that was Yah in the flesh, and that by crucifying him, they would give him his victory over death, and he being the only one who can possibly have all authority, right? Because the authority was given to Adam, all right? Right? Let's just to recap a little. I said I wasn't going to recap, but just to recap a little, okay? So we have Satan created first, the first angel, and then the other angels, and they were just created in the kind of Elohim. But not of his image and likeness. But then he creates Adam after his image and likeness, gives him dominion over all the earth, okay? And in this state, before he sinned and fell, Adam was more powerful than all the angels and had a better likeness and image, okay? But then, because of the trick that happened in the garden, and Adam choosing to go ahead and eat the fruit too, and fall with Eve, now all of a sudden, that authority was given to Hasatan, the prince of the air, and then he has authority over the world. But then here comes Messiah, and he comes in the flesh, and he lives the sinless life, which is what you would have to do. You'd have to not sin at all, or you couldn't have been the Messiah, right? But if he would have known that was him, and that crucifying him was then giving him his victory over death, and allowing him to then become the redeeming master that can graft back in the branches that were broken off, and he's the only one, because of who he is, because of what he is, because of living a sinless life and conquering death, that he's the only one. And when he did conquer death, he then got back the dominion that was lost with Adam, and now when he returns, he'll have dominion and will throw Satan from off his throne, and it's going to be glorious. But like it says here, if they had known all that, what I just explained to you, they would not have impaled the master. But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the hearts of men the things which Elohim hath prepared for them that love him. But Elohim hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit. For the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of Elohim. For what man knoweth the things of man, save the spirit of man which is in him, okay? Paul's saying, it's only because of the Ruach HaKodesh that we get from accepting the Messiah and him being our master, that we're able to perceive and understand these deep things, okay? Even so, the things of Elohim knoweth no man, but those that have the spirit of Elohim, okay? Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is Elohim, now that we do, that we might know the things that are freely given to us of Elohim, which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Holy Spirit teaches. This is important. We have to speak from what we understand from the Word that the Spirit showed us, not what the worldly knowledge would tell you how to teach these things, okay? Comparing spiritual things with spiritual, okay? But the natural man, this chaff, this possible tear, this other type of man, receiveth not the things of the Spirit of Elohim, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, because they're spiritually discerned. So Paul is saying that there are these natural men who don't have the ability to understand these things, because these things are spiritually discerned. and they are fleshly, carnal, natural men who don't have the spirit of Elohim in them. It's impossible for them to know. But he that is spiritual judgeth all things, yet he himself is judged of no man. For who hath known the mind of Yah, that he may instruct him? Nobody. But we have the mind of Messiah. Then, later in chapter 15, he comes back and touches on the same subject a bit more. And it says, Thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened, except it die. And that which thou sowest not that the body shall be, but bear grain. It may chance of wheat or of some other grain. So he's kind of using this parable of seeds and grain. But Elohim giveth it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed his own body. But all flesh is not of the same flesh. Here, see, this is kind of eerie when he's talking about it now. But there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fish, another of birds. There's also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. Now he's talking about angels and stars, right? But the glory of the celestial is one, the glory of the terrestrial is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For one star is different from another. In glory they're different. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption, it is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body, right? So this is what happens when you accept Messiah and you get mikvah. You lay down the natural man and you rise up a spiritual man, okay? You no longer do the fleshly, natural things that you did when you were in the flesh, and you then begin to discern spiritual things. There's a natural body and there's a spiritual body, and so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Talk about Messiah. Very interesting how that he's touching back on the Adam again. Howbeit, that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterwards that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthly. The second man is the master from heaven. As is the earthly, such are they also that are earthly. And as is the heavenly, such are they also that are heavenly. And as we have been born the image of the earthly, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. He's talking about the first begotten Adam, the firstborn, and the second, the first begotten by a woman, only begotten son of Messiah. And then here from Psalms chapter 49 we have another great excerpt, and this of course is Yah speaking through the pen of David, and this is pretty awesome. It says, Hear this, all you peoples, give ear, all you inhabitants of the world, both sons of mankind and sons of man, rich and poor together. Now he's going to go and talk about rich people specifically, but it's the same difference. Some people are fleshly, focused on worldly things, please excuse the train, and others can discern spiritual things. My mouth speaks wisdom, and the meditation of my heart brings understanding. I incline my ear to a parable. I expound my riddle on the lyre, which is an instrument. Why should I fear in the days of evil, when the crookedness of my supplanters surrounds me? Those who are trusting in their riches and who are boasting in their great wealth, a brother does not redeem anyone at all, neither give to Elohim a ransom for him. For the redemption of their lives is costly, and it shall cease forever, that he should still live forever, and not see the pit. For he sees wise men die. The foolish and the ignorant both perish, and shall leave their wealth to the others. Their graves are their houses forever, their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names, but man does not remain in esteem. He's like the beasts that perish. So he's comparing these people who are all about riches and possessions and houses and lands, comparing them to the beasts that perish. What do you know? This way of theirs is a folly to them, yet their followers are pleased with their words. Selah. Like sheep they shall be laid in the grave. Death shall shepherd them, and the upright rule over them in the morning, and their form is consumed in the grave, far from their dwelling. But Elohim does redeem my being from the power of the grave, for he does receive me, Selah, Do not be afraid when a man becomes rich, when the wealth of his house increases, for when he dies he takes none of it. His wealth does not go down after him. Though while he lived he is blessed himself, and though they praise you when you do well for yourself, he has to go to the generation of his fathers. They never see the light. Man who is rich, yet does not understand, shall be like the beasts. They shall perish. He mentions it again. There's an ugly one. Oof. Run into these beasts of the field. So this next little excerpt is, and in Genesis 37, we're talking about the story of Yosef, or Joseph, when his brothers sell him and they take his coat and put a bunch of blood on it, and then they tell their dad that an evil beast devoured him, and that's in chapter 37, verse 33, and it uses that word for beast there is the K-E, the one we were talking about, that definitely could be a two-legged upright thing. And this is from the book of Jasher, Sefer Yashar, chapter 43. We're going to start at verse 40. This is a little more information about what happened after that incident. And the sons of Yaakov went into the wilderness to seize the beasts. Okay, Jacob actually commands his sons to go find this beast that's killed Yosef. So the sons of Yaakov went in the wilderness to seize the beasts, and behold, a wolf came towards them. Now, of course, this is Yashar, so I can't tell what Hebrew word that was there for wolf, but a wolf, interesting. But it comes towards them. You don't see wolves do that in the wild. And they seized him and brought him unto their father, and said unto him, This is the first we found, and we have brought him unto you as you did command us. And your son's body we could not find. And Yaakov took the beast from the hands of his sons, and cried out with a loud weeping voice, holding the beast in his hands. And he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast, Why did you devour my son Yosef? And how did you have no fear of Elohim of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Yosef? And you did devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and did thereby render me culpable on his account. Therefore Elohim will require him that is persecuted. And Yahuwah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Yaakov with its words. And it answered Yaakov and spoke these words unto him, As Elohim lives, who created us in the earth, and as your soul lives, my Lord, I did not see your son, neither did I tear him to pieces. But from a distant land I came to seek my son, who went from me this day, and I know not whether he would be living or dead. And I came this day into the field to seek my son, and your sons found me, and seized me, and increased my grief. And have this day brought me before you, and I have now spoken all my words to you. Now therefore, O son of Adam, I am in your hands, and do unto me this day as it may seem good in your sight. But by the life of Elohim who created me, I did not see your son, nor did I tear him into pieces. Neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of my life. And when Yaakov heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished, and sent forth the beast from his hand, and she went her way. And Yaakov was still crying aloud and weeping for Yosef. Day after day he mourned for his son many days. So wow, there's a beast, a wolfy, maybe a werewolfy type beast who just can speak. Interesting. Here's a look at some of the races from this comic book series. They have dwarves, halflings, elves, humans, gnomes, half-orcs, and half-elves. All two-legged, upright, with hands, who can talk type of beasts. This is from 2 Peter chapter 2. A very interesting excerpt. We'll get to hear what Kifa thinks about these things. Kifa Bet, starting at verse 4. For if Elohim did not spare the angels who sinned, but sent them to Tartarus, interesting, he mentions the fallen angels there, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be kept for judgment, and did not spare the world of old, but preserved Noah, a proclaimer of righteousness, and 7 others, bringing in the flood on the world of the wicked, and having reduced to ashes the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, condemning them to destruction, having made them an example to those who afterwards would live wickedly, and rescued righteous Lot, who was oppressed with the indecent behavior of the lawless. For day after day that righteous man, dwelling among them, tortured his righteous being by seeing and hearing their lawless works. Then Yahuwah knows how to rescue the reverent ones from trial, and to keep the unrighteous unto the day of judgment, to be punished, and most of all, those walking after the flesh in filthy lust and despising authority. Now we're going to get a description here of these chaff, these tares, these folks. Bold, headstrong, speaking evil of esteemed ones, whereas messengers or angels who are greater in strength and power do not bring a slanderous accusation against them before the master. So he's saying these people will talk and speak out against Elohim and Yah, then the fallen angels don't even do that. But these, like natural and reasoning beasts, here's that word beast, having been born to be caught and destroyed. So he's saying they're born that way. Blaspheme that which they do not know, shall be destroyed in their destruction, being about to receive the wages of unrighteousness, deeming indulgence in the day of pleasure spots and blemishes, reveling in their own deceptions while they feast with you, having eyes filled with adulterousness, and unable to cease from sin, enticing unstable beings. So they entice the other people who are unstable, having a heart trained in greed, children of a curse, having left the right way, they went astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but he was rebuked for his transgression. A dumb donkey, speaking with the voice of man, restrained the madness of the prophet. These are fountains without water, still talking about these beasts, these men who can't be saved. Clouds driven by a storm, to whom the blackest darkness is kept forever. For speaking arrogant nonsense, they entice, through the lusts of their flesh, through indecencies, the ones who have indeed escaped from those living in delusion, promising them freedom, though themselves being slaves of corruption, for one is a slave to whatever overcomes him. So he's just describing what these evil people are doing. They're enticing people to leave the way and to go live these things, thinking they're going to have all this fun, when one is a slave to whatever overcomes him. So once you become indulgent in these things, you then become a slave to these things, which is very true. For if, after they have escaped the defilements of the world, through the knowledge of the Master of Savior Messiah, they are again entangled in them and overcome, the latter end is worse for them than the first. For it would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness, than having known it, to turn from the set-apart command delivered unto them. For them the proverb has become true. A dog returned to his own vomit, and a washed pig returns to her rolling in the mud. So Peter's describing people who can't be saved, and that it's better that they should never even hear the truth. Pearls before swine. Interesting here from Romans chapter 8, starting in verse 5, it says, "For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on matters of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit, the matters of the Spirit. For the mind of the flesh is death, but the mind of the Spirit is life and peace. Because the mind of the flesh is enmity towards Elohim, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Elohim. Neither indeed is it able," it's not capable. "And those who are in the flesh are unable to please Elohim." It's impossible for them when they're in the flesh. The Master answered and said unto him, "Truly, truly, I say unto you, unless one is born from above, he is unable to see the reign of Elohim." And I want to look over at Matthew chapter 13 real quick for our final thing here. And I don't know why I didn't have this in here already, as my internet goes a little slow there. Matthew chapter 13, and this is talking about what we're going to see here is very interesting, because Messiah spoke in parables, and it's like that one proverb that says it's the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter, and it's the righteousness of kings to search out that matter. So Yah likes to hide these hidden mysteries to where only certain people can understand them. And it reminds me of in Matthew chapter 13 here, when they asked Messiah, his disciples came to him and said, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And he answering said unto them, "Because it has been given to you to know the secrets of the reigns of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever possesses, to him shall more be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But whoever does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away from him." Now, if you think of that in terms of not possessions, but of like knowledge, of revelation, of spiritual things that To those that can understand these things, they're given a lot of knowledge and revelation, but to those who can't understand them, that knowledge they have is taken away. Because of this I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. He's talking about these people, these chaff. And in them the prophecy of Yeshayahu is completely filled, which says, hearing you shall hear, and by no means understand. Seeing you shall see, but by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become thickened, and their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn back, and I heal them. But blessed are blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. So, even the Messiah says he spoke in parables because of these different people. There's some that just aren't meant to go into the kingdom. And that's kind of the point of this here. We're trying to figure out that there's different types of people, and not everyone's supposed to get in the kingdom. And we've been given these clues to be able to tell who's tares and who's chaff and who's wheat. And I'm just trying to help you guys understand what's going on here in this crazy world of ours. So I hope you enjoyed part 3. I'm working on getting part 4 ready to record. And we'll talk about the harvest in the end and what happens at the end. Shouldn't be quite as long of a teaching as these first 3, but hope you've enjoyed them. As always, leave a comment, shoot me an email. If you want me to send you my notes, I can probably do that. Shalom, guys. Talk to you next time.